So welcome everyone to our webinar today, Poor Budgeting, Never Again. We have 45 minutes together today, and we're very much looking forward to exploring how to improve the role of budgeting at your organisation and the value that it actually delivers your organisation. So before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping to get out of the way. We do encourage you to ask questions today. And in the control panel of the webinar software that you're using at the moment, you'll see a questions box. And so we're dedicating 5 minutes at the end of the session to answer these questions. So please put the questions forward because it makes for great conversation at the end of the session. Also, we're recording our session today, and this means that you'll be able to watch it again if you want to from our YouTube channel or pass it on to colleagues that couldn't make it along today. So you'll get notification of when that's up on the YouTube channel after today. So quickly, just want to introduce ourselves today. My name's Rebecca Gatehouse. I've been working with PA now, of Professional Advantage, for over 12 years actually. And during that time, helping organisations specifically around budgeting and forecasting and reporting and business intelligence, and making those processes and functions more meaningful for the organisation. Joining me today is Graham, and Graham's actually going to run the demonstration of the software that we're showcasing today, Board. Graham's got a really excellent past in that he comes from a really financial accounting background, and I know a lot of people on the call come from that function as well, with some very interesting organisations that you can see there. But since 1995, as you can see there, he's become part of more the enabling software side of things, so helping organisations improve their planning and their business intelligence and reporting through implementing enabling technology. So you'll hear from Graham later on as he's going to run through the demonstration. I also just wanted to point out, we did advertise a different presenter today, Alberto, and so unfortunately Alberto couldn't make it today, but we're in the very capable hands of Graham. I'm looking forward to the demonstration later on. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce yourselves to each other as well. I'm not sure if you ever wonder who else is on webinars when you attend them, but looking through the list of people registered today, and there's about 50, almost 60 people registered for the webinar today, it struck me what a cross-section of industries that are represented. And this is just some of them, it wasn't all of them. And as you can see, there's just a cross-section of different industries, different types of organisations, but they all need to plan and they all need to budget and they all need to report. And the types of technology PA is very much interested in are those that are flexible to accommodate the requirements of different industries and the different processes that they have. So the agenda today, first of all, I'm just going to do a little bit of an overview of why some organisations consider the budgeting functioning something that they can improve upon. And then I'm going to introduce what Board is very briefly, and then the bulk of the webinar today is actually having a look at a particular example within Board that Graham's going to run through. And then at the end, we're going to run through all your questions that hopefully that you think about along the way. We're also going to run a poll question throughout, just one today, throughout the session, and that's to make the session a little bit more interactive, so that we can get you involved and also that you can see each other's results from that particular poll question that we'll get to after the demonstration. So if we go back to what the topic is today, what's wrong with budgeting? Why have we got a webinar called Poor Budgeting, Never Again? And why do we run a similar webinar every year? And there's a real demand for this webinar. And it's based on conversations, obviously, that we have with our different customers and other organisations. But if we take a step away from our direct experience and have a look at some independent results of some independent research surveys done by organisations and look at some of the feedback that those organisations get from the surveys that they conduct. And these particular stats or numbers here are from BARC, which is an independent organisation, as well as the Hackett Group. And if I just explain these quite quickly, so almost 50% of organisations in one particular survey said that their budgeting process takes too long, and then 26% said that by the time it's completed, part of it is actually outdated. Now, 95 days of physical effort put into producing a finalised budget, and on average over 4 months of elapsed time just to produce a financial plan. So the general consensus of those independent surveys are that it takes too long and it takes a lot of effort to produce the budget or the financial plan for the organisations. Now I just want to reflect, I guess, on the direct conversations that I have with customers and other organisations out there about their planning processes in general. And by planning, I mean, budgeting and forecasting. What do I hear about the common reasons or challenges or things that people want to improve with their process? Well, 99% of the time, people are using spreadsheets, Microsoft Excel, to complete their budget. And one of the biggest bugbears of using spreadsheets for the budget is the sheer amount of time it takes to make it work and work well. So to produce a budget that someone senior can sign off on, they're confident that it's accurate, they're confident that it has integrity, just the amount of time it takes to create new versions, to consolidate all the different pieces of input in there, to import the data that's relevant to that, and then sit there and double check and make sure that everything adds in, you're not missing anything, that the formulas are correct, just takes a lot of time. And that's probably one of the biggest issues raised with us. But there's a whole series of other reasons why people are frustrated with their budgeting process. And largely it's because of the method that they're doing it, the technology that they're using to do it, but some of it's to do with business process and culture as well. So if we run through some of those issues and reasons people consider their budgeting process needing some improvement. For example, disconnected. So we have organisations that we speak with that the planning is disconnected across the organisation. So the financial budgets are completed quite disconnected and separate to operational planning. And that obviously, is not an ideal, and people are looking for a more integrated approach. It's the inability to quickly do things like scenario plans and some what-if analysis on the fly. They find it just takes too long to do it in Excel, therefore it's not meaningful and can be outdated by the time that's been done. No collaboration, not being able to involve all the participants that you would like to involve in the process because it's too difficult to involve them in the technology that you're currently using because it's too difficult to allow them to input and participate using that technology. And one final point on this slide is you can't manage the process. So budgeting isn't just some numbers in Excel, it's a full business process, and it has phases and steps, and it has approvals, and so it has a real workflow. And that's one thing that is very difficult to manage if Microsoft Excel is one of your main pieces of technology. And so one of the demonstration that Graham's going to show you today really focuses around the workflow and the process management around budgeting, and so hopefully you'll get some good insight into how that can be improved. So if we reflect just very quickly before I get to introducing board to the last two slides, and we take the two key points out of the independent research, and that is that planning tends to take too long and it tends to take too much effort. And it potentially has some other issues like not being a full reflection of the business's plans in terms of it's not integrated across the business, and it doesn't actually involve every person that we would like it to. And so I've often thought of this question, and I've been doing some reading of recent research papers released, and this question got raised in a number of them. So I thought I'd raise it with you today just to take away with you, is that do you get a return on your planning processes based on the effort that you put into that? So I'll just leave that question with you to ponder. So now I'd like to introduce you to Board. So Board is software application, a technology platform, and in a very unsophisticated way, I refer to it as an all-in-one tool. And what I mean by that is it's a single place to do the four things that we traditionally pull apart, and four things that tend to get completed by different people in the organisation using different pieces of data and sometimes different pieces of technology. And those four main things are, we want to derive and track strategy on what the purpose is for the organisation and what we're going to do. We want to be able to plan how we're going to do that. So we'll budget, we'll forecast, we'll do some modelling. How will we fulfil our strategy? Then we want to monitor it, we want to report, and then we want to analyse. We want to find out why things happened, do some what-if scenarios and work out what should actually feed into our plan in order to deliver on that strategy in a better way. And in order to do all those things, we need some functionality like budgets and forecasts and what-if simulation and self-service reporting. And by being able to, I guess, do all that in one place, which Board quite genuinely offers, we are able to deliver the business, I guess, a single place in order to be making decisions for the organisation. And importantly, it allows us to bring all our data into one single place in order to complete all the things I just spoke about. There tends to be many sort of different sources of truth or sources of data across an organisation. And the very fact, and let's just bucket those into two main ones. We tend to find there's a source of truth for financial data, and there tends to be a source of truth for operational data. And the very fact that organisations have different places where people are making decisions from actually puts at risk the effectiveness of planning and reporting across our organisations. So Board allows that data to be united, but it also it gives us all the functionality we need to, in a single place, plan, monitor and analyse. So just before I hand over to Graham, I just want to touch on a case study that will give you some insight into all the things that we've spoken about today. An organisation that's taken upon themselves to solve some of those challenges around reporting and around planning. And you can get this case study off our website, pa.com.au. Go to our case studies and download the Lifestyle Solutions case study for a full read. But you'll see what happens when Microsoft Excel was very deeply ingrained across Lifestyle Solutions for reporting and for planning. And they've put Board in place there to overcome some of the challenges they were having around using Excel. Now, they had the disruption of the NDIS coming into play, and I know there's some disability service providers on this session today, and they used that as a catalyst to meet the demands of that and be more responsive and proactive in adapting their operations. So you'll see there some quotes from the case study about some practical outcomes in terms of doing things quicker, but please do read the full case study in order to get the full picture of how they've improved their reporting and their planning at Lifestyle Solutions. So I'm going to hand presenter mode to Graham now, and he's going to run through an example of Board.
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca. Okay, I'm going to fire off Board now. I'm going to fire that off from my browser. I've got a shortcut here. And today I'm going to be logging into Board as the administrator. Of course, we can have many different users within Board, and those users can have different levels of security, different levels of access to different apps and different abilities to do different things within those apps. I'm coming through to my landing page here, and I'm going to go into my favorites, where I've set the app or the capsule that I'm going to use today as my favorite. The home screen is customizable. I just added that to my favorites. Just click up here, I could change the icon and so forth. So I'm now into the app that we're going to show today, the main app, which is built to showcase the workflow side of Board. Board uses a toolkit approach in building apps for planning, budgeting, workflow, reporting and analytics. It has very low programming skills needed. It's built for end user with this toolkit to actually build up both the visualizations and processes that run through imports, charts, the whole bit. They're all very similar screens within the toolkit. Every application is customized. Later I shall show you a few more analytical based and reporting based applications. But for your organisation, you might want it to be completely different. You can have two organisations with exactly the same budgeting process, but when it comes down to visualizations and how the look and feel, it's different for different people. So you can set them in your corporate colours, even within your organisation yourself. You might find that different audiences want a different view. This particular demonstration is simplified. It's a generic approach to workflow. So what we've done up here at the top is we've put some buttons here that allow us to go into different areas. Down the bottom, we've put a couple of settings type bubbles here that we can go into and activate some things. And then we've put the main workflow side of things in the middle of the app. And different people might have different access within here. Other people might come in and they only see these areas here as crosses or ticks and not have the ability to actually do things within there. So first of all, I'm going to go into the top level, which is aimed at sort of giving an overview of the budget process as they're coming along. So the first screen here is the tracking screen. So within here, as the administrator of the budget, I can sort of see who's doing what, where they're up to, and also set things. So we've set a number of areas that are not applicable for particular departments. We've got filters on the side here. So this grid view here, this report, is filterable. So we can select on there and just reduce down what we're seeing. Me as the overall administrator might have the ability to approve things within here. So if this is submitted, so I can click within there and I can go in and I could reject the budget or approve the budget. So if I approve that budget and OK, we've built some processes in the back end and saying, are you sure you want to do that? And those processes could be just as simple as that screen popping up, or in the back end, they could be taking a backup of the budget, copying it across to another version, sending notifications, pushing updates through other apps. The next tab across here we've got is the progress summary. So it's a dashboard view, so you can sort of see where you are in the budget process. I'm a fan of having numbers with colours rather than charts and things like that, but everybody's different. So I like this screen that I can easily see that area that I'm looking for is 100% and all green, and zeros or whatever in the red side of things. But here we're right at the beginning of the process, so we can see that we've got a lot in pending. And we could have things that, as you can see, I hover over within here. We could have drill downs to other bits to find more details within that. But at this stage, I'm not going to go into those. So when you're in the budgeting side of things, especially if you're at a high level, you're probably looking at results at a high level. So while you can drill down and see all the underlying bits, you might have a focus that you're looking on as things are going along. You've got some key things in your head. So here's a report just at the summary level. So bringing all the information together. We've got some last year actuals, the year-to-date actuals, and this current budget that we're working on, or the current year's focus, so we can forecast, so we can see that. There's another couple of buttons here. These are actually going to shoot off to other apps, which I'm going to come back later on. They could be the apps that the managers are actually using to enter through. They could be some reporting apps or whatever. I'm now going to click onto the return to workflow. So I'm back to this screen. I'm now going to go to the bottom of the screen and I'm going to go into the settings area. So within the settings, these could be many things that you do right at the beginning of the process. Could have some reads, pulling information in from other systems like your accounts, your divisions or projects or employees and the like. We could have customers coming in, products. Because we're in the budgeting process, it's more than just reading from your ERP systems or your payroll systems or your CRM. It is forecasting for the future. So you might want to add new products. You might want to say that certain items are not used for budgeting. So we might say, well, we've got some items here that we no longer want those to be used in the budget side of things. So I'm not going to go into all these screens up here, but I will hop into the security side of things for a look at this side of things. So here we've got a data grid, a report, and within here we can actually see the different users. So here the users are not by name, they're by positions and departments, and we can see what areas people have access to. So we can see that the senior manager has access to all areas within the budgeting process. Safety manager has access to nothing. I'm going to now give him access to the fees and click the process and run that through. So that's now giving him access to that side of things. So this is all, things right at the early stage of getting your budgeting process up and running. We've gone through the setups. Now it might be over to the CFO or the same administrator. We're now going to go into the version side of things. So right at the start of the budgeting process, you might be creating new versions. So again, this is customized. It can be completely different look and feel to do the same sort of thing, but I've got a drop down here and I can see different versions of the budgets and so forth. To add new budgets, I can just go into here and I can go 2019 E, 2019 budget. I might have some relationships I need to do with those budgets. I can set up, so that's a current forecast, and I can submit. I'm just going to cancel that side of thing, and that's created the budget ID. We can have something that copies the versions, so you might want to manually move versions across. So you might want to say we're on version 1, version 2, and the like. Those procedures that copy those across can also run backups and can lock versions and the like. I'm now going to go into the approvals matrix. So here we put something down and we can sort by department. So I'm looking at the commercial department on the P&L, who's got the ability to actually approve things. So that could be a very simple model, or it could be as complicated as you could imagine for different levels of approvals within this application. We've got data imports. So very early in the piece of the budgeting side of things, we usually pull on an ERP system or your payroll system to pull across information. If this was purely reporting, these would be automated, but generally as part of a budgeting process, you run the data imports at a set stage. You say, right, well, we're actually going to show 2017, 2018 results as available, and we'll pull year to date up until December and leave that fixed. So everybody's forecasting from then on, and say, well, that's everybody's looking at that set of data. So these are procedures that can pull those in. They can run tick boxes and say, step done. Just going to hop into the help screen here. Now, this is a very basic sort of help screen. So what we're aiming to do with an implementation is say, once you're in the app, you don't need to go anywhere else for any information on what you're supposed to be doing. So you could make these very flash with screenshots. You can embed documents. They could be Word documents or Excel documents. While Workboard allows you to data entry and so forth, you might want some things that are actually kept outside of Board as far as calculations are going, but then are used for backup within Board, and they're embedded within Board. So you can have embedded Office documents and the like within here. Just going to use my back button there and return to my main menu. So we can go through that and create all those versions, create that version. we could have something that if we've done all the steps, this automatically got ticked to green, but we've put that one so it's running here, something on the front. We then might go in and set our timelines. So from within our timelines here, we can set up all the times that, or the dates that we're expecting people to come back to us with answers and the like. So board is a reporting product as well as analytics as well as budgeting. So we're not concentrating on the reporting side of things, but just in here, I am going to go into the edit mode of this screen and just show you how easy it is to change reports. So that particular report that we're looking in there, I can go up here and I can see what sort of entities are in there, and it's just drag and drop, and I can drag and drop an item within there. It's going to tell me if it's a valid thing. As we can see there, it's not. So if I go back in there and go back into my area within here and pull in travel, for example, and put in something that is valid, I've then changed the look and feel of that data view or report, and I could just apply that and save it, and I could go back in and update there. I can also control whether you're allowed to data entry within that screen. I could add filters and the like. So that's basically just a brief touch on the reporting side of things. So I'm going to cancel out of there. So that's where we've got the approvals and so forth. So I'm now going to tick that off. So that processing could run a number of things behind the scene. I'm going to return to the menu, and that particular one there we've pushed through so that that tick gets updated from the steps below that. I'm now going to notify the managers. So as opposed to sending off the automatic email based on steps, we're actually just physically going in there and saying, right, our budgeting timetable's down, start thinking about it, whatever. It's not necessarily saying that they're ready to budget at this stage, it's saying that the timetable's there. This is an application that's been designed heavily on updates being drivers running through. So there's a number of company settings and travel settings and the like. So this is a particular one here where we've got the costs coming through from different airfares and the like. So this is shaded as yellow, so that shading through this application means that we can go there and update. So I'm going to drop that fare down there to $1,100 and push that through. So that's just data entry, but data entry is a lot flasher in board than it is in Excel. So Excel, you've basically got all your drivers coming into totals. We're going to see this a bit more as we get into the data entry side of things further on. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, well, that I could increase the cost of my fares by 10%. So I could just do 10% increase. I could stick a figure in there and make them all the same figure. I'm going to say, well, I know that the total of my airfares actually needs to be $14,700, and I'm going to push that through there. They've gone to red, so they're all ready to go through. Push that back, and we're done. So that's done my travel settings. I'm now processing that and return to workflow. So that's now made my company assumptions all updated. I'm now going to go into my HR side of things. So payroll and HR is often a very large portion of the budgeting process, and it can be quite different to the rest of the budgeting side of things. So you might be coming in here at a first off level and saying, well, these are the new staff members positions that we want to push in. So we say, right, let's run an import from our payroll system, pull all the data across. Then on top of that, we then want to say, well, what are we expecting to do? We might have something where we're going through and we're doing allocations of those people across different departments. We might pull in and get their home base, and then we might be able to actually change their home base. We can put some assumptions into there for extra people. We can add some reports on here, change the report, long-term rates and expected CPI increases and the lot. So we can go through that whole process and apply that. And then by doing that, what we can do is then give the ability to the managers just to budget by head count within positions and have those dollar values flow through automatically without them being able to see the actual underlying staff costs for it. Okay, so that's the HR side of things. We then might have allocations. So corporate allocations, for example, we might have certain departments that are spread over other departments, and that we might have some chargebacks or different sort of things. So here we've got some different pro rata percentages. We've got some dollar values that are assigned off. So we can do those. We could reset it, run those allocations. So those allocations, we might have some rules, long-term and short-term, different versions of how those allocations go across departments. And we could actually run those allocations and start pre-populating some stuff in the forms that our managers are going to look at. So I'm going to back to the workflow. So we're getting to the stage where we're actually ready to start getting the wider audience involved in this process. And we could say, right, we're going to open our plan. It's ready to go. So that basically just changes the color of the tick in this instance. But in a real life scenario, that might put a load of processes in place, backups and sending things off. We send off a notification to say that the budget is open. So at this stage, your managers are then able to go into their apps, which might be very, very different to this, and they might be different for different managers in different areas. So that they go backwards and forwards, that's coming back. You go back to your tracking side of things up here and you look at your status here, and as that moves along, you can get to a stage where you then want to review those figures. So at the high level, we're going in here and we're going to see what's coming through here. And we might say, well, you know, here's the high level results. And you could actually be really happy with the results, except for you could say, well, actual fact, I want to change one of these figures here and say, you know, I expect this figure here to be 6.1 million. So it's the highest level. You might have hundreds of sheets feeding that in, sales by debtor and product and different people, and you can actually push that down, accept that, and instead of having to go back to your managers and say, change all your revenue and the whole lot, you've taken from the top and you've pushed that down over all areas of the budget. You probably, you know, at this early stage, you'd be sending it back to them. Don't forget, Board is a BI tool. It's all about visualization. So, you know, here within the visualizations, that's just one visualization that we put on there to show this particular data and filter down within there. Now, I've cheated here and I've just put a little jump to data entry. So I'm going to leave this application here and go into a suggested application that the managers might be running. So theirs might be a very different look and feel. So this might be what our managers are doing to enter theirs. We can see sort of a different version of a progress bar here. I'm going to hop into here and I'm going to go into my quantities. So this might be our sales manager. So we've got a grid. This could have been populated by bringing in historical sales. So if you're working on a sales budget, you have a lot of data coming in from history. You've got products by customers, by regions, and the whole bit. And to really recreate that at the granular level is an impossible task. So what we might have is we might say, right, well, here at the customer level by channel level, here's what we've got come through from our actuals beforehand, and we might want to say, let's increase that to 900 at that stage. And if we enter across there, it's going to flow those back and update those changes. You might notice not everything changed. So I might say, well, this particular area here, I actually want to lock that, and I'll make that 900 and push that down. And I was typing in 900 and it went back to 896 because we've set those down to whole field. So the splat down of that data doesn't make sense. So it's rounded to 896. What we have done also is we've now updated that down to the product side of things. In the product, so we might start at our customers and by channels. So here we now see by our products, and that's our next level of focus. So we come down here and we can see the delta changes, and we can say, well, this particular product here, we actually are going to discontinue that. I'm going to put that in as a figure of 0. I'm going to accept that. I can then go through and say this particular one here, and I'm going to go into 80% and roll that down. So this is all updating the whole process, and then we can go back to so we can accept all that and process that. So I'm now going to go back to my main app, back through to my favorites, and I'm going to show you just a couple of other areas where I go through to, and just to show that there's different look and feels. So here might be a different application where people are running through and doing some analysis here. So you might be saying, let's do some scenarios and mix all those up. Okay, and another one that I put on that drill down here was a different scenarios, but really that's going down to a look and feel of an app that is built to show different types of charts. So within there, I've got some charts like that. I've put a different navigation here. So we go down to cash flow, for example. So if you're budgeting, I love the waterfall side of things. I use a lot of products, and waterfall charting is very difficult in some. It's very easy in Board. I like the way that you build them to start with and how you interact with them. So you can pick on anything on area that's a negative, for example, and see the underlying data. So that's a quick overview of Board aimed primarily at workflow. So I'm going to now hand that back to Rebecca. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Graham. Hopefully you saw through that demonstration, and as Graham pointed out, that's just an example, a particular example configured in Board. But hopefully throughout that you saw how we can overcome some of these challenges around our planning processes and reporting by using enabling technology like Board and being able to manage our reports and our plans within a single environment. So I'm just going to run very quickly through the poll question. So we've just got one today, and it just gives you some insight into some other organisations' challenges and what their priorities are around planning, so that you can compare that to yourself. So just the question we want to ask today is, what's your biggest priority to improve? And you will hopefully see the answers up that you can answer, and shortly we'll get those results up. Effectively 58% of people on the call answered all of the above. So they need to make it quicker, they want to be able to manage the process itself, use broader capabilities, and integrate planning more across the organisation. So thanks everyone for sharing that. And now we're going to go on to some questions, and there were a couple put through. Thank you for those people that have put them through. And we've got time just to address a couple of them now. So one of them was there a set of systems that board integrates to? Graham, could you just address that and just talk about board's integration capabilities across different systems?
Board can integrate from and to any systems that it can get access to, whether it's through SQL queries, through ODPC connections. Basically, if it's accessible by anything else, it's certainly accessible by board. Generally, we are reading from other systems. Often we do push back the results of budgets to the budget files in an ERP system. Sometimes we do push back things like departments and the like within payroll systems. So yes, it is a standalone system, but it reads to and from.
Excellent, thank you. And board does have a number of standard connectors available with it as well. And one last question, is board in the cloud? I can address that one. So board is reasonably unique in that you can choose your deployment strategy. So you can have board on premise, so on your own servers or your own hosted partner servers, or it can be in board's managed cloud, so a software as a service vendor managed cloud by board. So you've got both those options. If you would like to reach out and have any further questions or would like to have a conversation, if you're a customer already of Professional Advantage, please contact your account manager and we can organise further conversations from there, or please feel free to reach out to me directly on those details there. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.